Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Scene Subplots and Side Quest podcast. It's me, Joshua Washam, here with my friend,
Chris CKJ. How's it going, everybody?
and we have an exciting episode for you today where we are going to discuss the Demon Slayer Infinity Castle movie that just came out a couple weeks ago. Chris and I both saw it, and we have some thoughts. And we're going to talk a little bit about the Nintendo Direct that happened, but we're going to focus a little bit on the Pokemon side of things on it. A lot of stuff got released and talked about, but we are going to focus mainly on Pokemon and also touch on a little bit of what's going on with Pokemon and Pal World. So before we jump into it, just to give a further breakdown of what we're doing, we're going to spend about half the episode on Demon Slayer, talking about that, and then the other half talking about Nintendo and Pal World. And then, we wanted to talk a little bit about Marvel Zombies, but it's more suited for next week's episode where we're doing our comic book review, and it just kind of makes sense considering Marvel Zombies is an incredible comic. I don't know if you've read it, Chris, but I remember when I first read it, I was like, oh man, zombies and superheroes kind of a cool combo.
Yeah, I read it a long time ago, but I remember some key parts of it, so I'm excited to talk about it for next week, though.
Awesome. Well, why don't we go ahead and jump into it? When did you see Demon Slayer, Chris?
So I saw it on Sunday, the weekend of the release. Um, and it's been a little bit, and I've been digesting it. You know, and first of all, I just want to say we'll talk about the movie, so spoilers ahead. So if you haven't seen it, tune back in next time or tune back in when you have seen it, so that way you're not spoiled. Um, but overall, the movie was really good. I like the soundtrack, I like the action, the animation, and most of all, the backstory a lot of the villains or demons in this case had, and just their motivations and all that cool stuff. Like the first battle, which is, and I'm going to say some of these names wrong, so please don't give me too much flack in the comments, but we got Shinobu versus Doma, which was an incredibly good fight. You had somebody who was super fast and uses poison versus a demon who is honestly the third strongest demon in the entire Infinity Castle. And she's just poisoning the crap out of him. He's shooting ice like a ninja. It was all around a really amazing and really great fight. Um, what did you think of the first battle, Josh?
Well, before we dissect, I guess, the battles, let me just talk about the movie uh in its entirety, the whole, like what you said. The soundtrack was great, the visuals were amazing, the animation has the budget of that of a movie, which I loved. And they really did expand on some of like the story beats from the manga, which I also really enjoyed. I will say I thought that the pacing was off. The pacing felt to me more like it it the movie to me felt like it felt like it was that of a you could tell that it was a TV show trying to be a movie, if that makes any sense. Not saying that it was bad, but when it comes to what I expect a pacing of a movie that's anywhere from an hour and a half to 3 hours long, it felt like it was two or three Demon Slayer episodes cut together as a movie, as opposed to the Mugen Train arc, which felt like a movie that then got cut into Demon Slayer episodes. This one felt like the opposite. I could kind of tell that they kept the series in mind, so that way they could cut it up into several episodes. It had the budget of a movie, the animation, the sound, the visuals and stuff like that were that of a movie, but I would say that the overall package didn't feel like a movie. if that makes any sense. I don't know if you felt that, Chris, but I kind of got that like that sense. Like I felt like if I took my father to this movie, he wouldn't get it. He wouldn't understand it. And that's a tough thing about this. This is definitely for people who have watched the manga, but there
Right.
wasn't that much exposition. There wasn't that much like lore of the past. It just jumped right into it. It expected
Yep.
you to know everything about Demon Slayer before jumping into it. And that's
Right.
where, when a TV show tries to release some sort of like theatrical experience, that's where I think it's a little off, right? Because I would love to bring somebody who's never really seen Demon Slayer to see some of these like these theatrical outings, but you can't. I would have had to try to catch up my family on the entire story before jumping into it. So I just wanted to get that out the way before we talk about the first battle and jump into like a review of the movie. It the pacing was that of multiple TV shows instead of that of a full movie. That being said, the first battle, uh, yeah, man, like so I think they did a really good job as to because like in the manga too, they make a point that she's not strong enough to cut off demons' heads, and that's why she uses poison. She's honestly one of my favorite characters. I'll refer to her as the butterfly Hashira, because I'm also bad with names. And like they did a good job in this in kind of I think they did a great job in all of them in expanding the battles to fit the theatrical release of this, right?
Right.
I think they did a good job in leaving the cliffhanger
Mhm.
of the movie in general, but specifically with that battle, right? Because it's not over yet.
Right. Mm-mm.
We have her apprentice protege, the Tanjiro's kind of love interest um there as well. Although what I like about the manga and the anime is they don't really do too much lovey-dovey stuff. Like all these demon slayers stand on business, and the
Oh
business
yeah.
is killing demons, not trying
Mhm.
to be involved in interpersonal relationships. Which is
Right.
kind of cool because like sometimes they always try and shoehorn a romance in there, and I
Mhm.
feel like you don't always have to, right?
No. No. Totally.
So uh I love the battle itself. For those who don't know, this demon has the ability to absorb and like basically eat its prey, right? It's kind of like a spider. But I think they did a really good job as to uh, expand on the background of the character and the demon. I think the anime in general has done a really good job as to highlighting that like these aren't demons from hell. These are humans who have been brought to like the brink of despair. And is what's Muzan's really good at is uh picking at those insecurities and turning them into something into a monster essentially, right?
Right.
So I love the idea of the fact that she compensates the ability to chop off a head through poisons.
Mm-hmm.
And man, I feel bad because I wanted to reread the manga because I remember there's more to this battle than meets the eye, right? And it's one of
Right.
those things that you'll get more of if you have read the manga. So the first battle was a great setup. I kind of so I look at this kind of I used to watch wrestling, and when you book wrestling matches, like you want the last battle to be the most badass battle, right? You want the last
Oh yeah.
match to be the highlight, and you want it to have a strong opener. And I think it did a good
Mm-hmm.
job as to having a strong opener. I will say
Oh
the
yeah.
battle after that though is one of my favorites. It's one of my favorites, which we'll talk about a little, after this. But my favorite part about the first battle is the struggle. Like
Hmm.
she is one of the she's a Shira, right? So she's got the skills and power in her own way, but doesn't
Hmm.
necessarily have the power that she needs. And she talks about
Hmm.
her other companions, and about how she wishes she was just like a little taller, a
Hmm.
little stronger, and how that could really help her out in these battles, and how she's
Oh
had to
yeah.
compensate and just add different venoms and stuff like that. And I love how like the villain noticed too. Like the villains are as capable as the demon slayers. I kind of am over mangas where the main character doesn't necessarily struggle against, like, they've been sent to another world and they're the strongest being. I'm like, how boring is that? You know what I mean? Like,
Totally.
one of the best parts about some of my favorite animes like Dragon Ball and Naruto is they had to earn their power.
Yep.
They weren't just right off the bat the most powerful. And you get to see in this, uh demons win. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the
Yep.
Hashira's struggle because like you're fighting the strongest of the strongest demons. So
Right.
that's like what I loved about this battle is it wasn't just brute strength. It showed struggle. It highlighted the reasons why these Hashiras got into the positions they are, why they fight, and why they despise demons. What was your favorite part about it? About the first battle?
I really have to say the struggle, right? Because she's thinking of how do I beat this demon? Because, like you mentioned, she is fast, right? Demon the Demon Domu said she's one of the fastest Hashira out there, right? But she doesn't have the physical strength to use that speed to its maximum. So she compensates with those poisons. And, he's taking those poisons like, "Ooh, what do you got next? What do you got next?" And, she's pulling every trick out of the book she has in her repertoire, and it's failing, it's not working, and she's doubting herself, and she's remembering the previous Hashira, which was her older sister, right? And she's
Mhm.
comparing herself to the older sister. And we've all had moments where we compare ourselves to somebody else because they're better at something or they have something you don't. And it's just coming to realize that you do have something that the other person doesn't have, and you just got to find it, right? Or
Right.
compensate to be as good or better than that person. And just seeing that struggle, and then just, you know, like you said, having real high stakes like death really makes the story and the fights feel that much more invested, right? I was
Right.
so invested in this fight because I'm like, is she gonna make it out? Or is she not? Because I haven't read the manga. So I was literally glued to my seat just watching this, being like, oh God, is she gonna live? Is she gonna die? And just seeing those high stakes, it's just like anything could happen. And as the battle ended, I'm like, you know, it is sad how it ended, but I'm not mad about it, right?
Yeah.
She gave it her all and she pulled no punches. And even the demon was respectful. He's like, yo, you're like one of the greatest people I've ever met in a way, right?
Yeah.
And to, honor you, I'm going to consume you so that way you're with me forever. That's how he, you know, operates. Is like, hey, if
Shows
I
his
eat you
respect.
exactly, and which is so dark and gruesome, and you're like, man, I can't wait for this guy to die, right? That's what makes him a good villain, right? You just
For
can't
sure.
wait for him to die. And I just love that whole dynamic with that fight.
Yeah, yeah. I love the visuals of the castle too.
Oh, so
I
good.
I noticed that you're frozen a bit. I'm gonna see if I can't fix that. But
Oh,
that's all right. You're just frozen at a funny spot. At least it's Frozen at that
Lightning.
funny spot. Yeah. I don't know if there's a way for you to turn off your and on your camera on your end or whatnot, but,
Well, I'll
if not,
try
we'll
as
just
we're
continue on.
talking.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, yeah, man, the visuals of the castle, that the budget of the animation, you can tell, is that of a theatrical release because it is,
Mhm.
like, the highest it could get in many ways, which is what we want in a lot of those situations, you know? And,
Right.
the way the castle is expanding, I mean, it just I think of like, "Oh, shit, I wanna add that to, like, a D&D game." That's, like, a really cool idea of this infinity map almost, where it's got that Harry Potter, like, up is down, down is up type of deal. I loved
Mhm.
how after that battle, when we're seeing the other uh, Demon Slayer corpse, kind of like, I'm glad that regular ass Demon Slayers aren't just getting slumped. They're actually
Yep.
like beheading demons, and the Hashiras are able to go and just try and get to the big players instead of
Mhm.
dealing with all the small fries, right?
Right.
But when they're falling and they're trying to catch themselves so they don't go splat, I think that's really cool.
Yep.
And man, my boy Zenitsu gets his due in
Oh,
this,
yeah.
right?
For
So
sure.
what I loved is you get to see the Zenitsu kind of badass dead eyes, but he's not asleep. He's awake and conscious the entire time,
Mhm.
and we get to see him. And like, I know when I read the manga, this was like, oh dude, this is such a cool reveal. And also
Mhm.
the number one is going to be badass. I mean, they showed him, excuse me,
Yeah.
they showed him in the anime, which
Mhm.
is dope. um I won't spoil that, even though we're talking about spoilers. I think I'll try and be as spoiler free on some of the little details. But the number one is number one for a reason and is pretty badass for a reason. But Zenitsu goes against his former uh thunder breathing like partner, right? Like the former Hashira is training two of them. One of them is kind of like a prodigy who knows
Mhm.
all the forms except for the first, and Zenitsu kind of completes the set by knowing only the first.
Right.
And all throughout the series, you get this sense that their mentor is trying to instill him with confidence, Zen- Zenitsu, that it's okay that he doesn't know the other forms and to only focus on perfecting what he can do instead of worrying about what he can't do. Yeah.
Right.
So I think I love that. I love that. It reminds me of Bruce Lee. I think I mentioned that in the last episode, but you don't fear the man who's practiced 1,000 different kicks. Fear the man who's practiced one kick 1,000 times. It might be punches, whatever. But the point of it is fear the man who's gained mastery over a technique, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that's what Zenitsu kind of embodies, is that while he only knows one technique, that one technique is getting him far.
Oh, yeah.
And I think, oh man, I love that when they're like flashing back and showing the mentor and Zenitsu's like kind of love for his brother in arms, and how much hate that his I will just say his brother has for Zenitsu. And like Zenitsu, I think in the anime comes off a little bit more whiny and annoying to some than in the
Mhm.
manga. But I started with the manga, and like when you're reading it, it's I feel like it's not as cheesy or campy. I mean, it is definitely meant to be that, but in your head voice, you don't have to make it as whiny or as bitchy, right?
Right.
But in the anime, they really exaggerate it. And I feel like that exaggeration makes when he is serious more impactful when you see it.
Hmm.
What did you think of this battle?
I thought it was really awesome. And you brought up the fact that, Zenitsu mastered this technique down to, perfection, whereas his predecessor learned all the other steps. And, he's using all these different, forms of the thunder style, and Zenitsu's using the same one. And just because he's using the same one, he's, you know, actually beating the guy, just like, oh, why am I losing? Why am I, getting pushed back when this, so-called loser is, way weaker than me? And one of the things I really liked is like, he's practiced this one move for to perfection. And then in the last bit of the fight, instead of learning all those step or forms, he creates his own, which is,
Yeah.
crazy. Cause like, never read the manga, so that was a huge surprise. And I'm like, see, that is what, to me, sword fighting is you kind of get a foundation and then you just branch off and do your own thing. And that way you can perfect something different rather than what someone else has, right? And just seeing that and him scaling the damn tower or castle and then cutting them up, I was like, dude, that is such a cool technique. I love that whole thing. And even toward the end, he was still a demon. Like he's like, even he's in it to beat me. How could I lose to this worm? And I will never forgive him for, all the humiliation he gave me. And I'm like, dude, what a way to stick to your guns, because he could have easily had that trope of like, oh, I'm turning over a new leaf after I'm dying. Nah, he's straight demon till the very end. And
Yeah. Yeah. He's
yeah,
kind of like the opposite of the last battle.
yeah, and
Um,
he just embodies that so well. And I just like that they didn't go with that cheesy out of like, oh, because Zenitsu did something I couldn't, he gets my respect. No, he's still villain and he's pissed. And I just find that really nice to have a change of pace, if you will.
yeah, man. And they talk about how if he was a new demon, right? He was this
Right.
powerful on Upper Moon because he was a breath user who became a demon. And I love like the foreshadowing of that.
Oh yeah.
Uh because that sets up some of the other demons later on in the series. I won't get too much into it for those who haven't read the manga, but yeah, that was that him Zenitsu fighting him was basically uh, a big foreshadow of future things to come with some of the other demons. Yeah.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
the fact that and that's what I loved is that the breath using demon, his brother essentially knew all the other forms except the first one, and Zenitsu built a whole new form based off of his mastery of the first.
Yep. Which was
So I love that he was conscious throughout the entire thing and he was talking shit, you know? He was kind of like it's like, "Hey, I got to kill you for my master," essentially. You know, it's like
yeah.
you're the disgrace and I was the one who like looked up to you for the longest time type of deal.
Yeah.
Now it just kept accelerating, ramping up to the final battle, which was like a
Mhm.
2v1.
Yep.
What did you think about the rematch? Except this time, instead of facing the flame Hashira, it was the water Hashira with Tanjiro.
Dude, they definitely saved the best for last. And kind of like you said, the pacing was a little bit weird, like in the first fight when it comes to the backstory of the demon. The backstory of Akaza was so good because then you get a lot of context of why he became a demon and how he forgot why he wants to get stronger. And he's fighting Tanjiro and he's fighting the Water Shira. You just kind of get like this feeling of like, wow, after seeing his background, I would, very much do the same thing, because it was crazy what happened to the entire, backstory of him, like his, you know, father dying due to shame or just trying to, relieve him of being taking care of his father, and
The
then his
origin of his
teacher
tattoos.
in the origin of his tattoos being a thief and, not afraid of getting them or keep doing it, and then meeting his master and then building a family, found family off that, and then him losing it, and then, just all that accumulates to him fighting, you know, the demon slayers, and he's just getting stronger, right? And in the fight, his head comes off and he's still fighting, still kicking ass, and he just kind of like remembers who he was and remembers why he wanted to get stronger, and he just, made a full circle, kind of like a Piccolo or Vegeta, right? They kind of like, oh, I don't have to be evil to be stronger. I can be strong by having someone to protect.
Yeah.
And I really like that a lot. And I like how Tanjiro kind of reminded him of that during their fight.
Well, and the cool thing about the 2v1 is I'm pretty sure in the manga we didn't get as much of the Giyu, the Water Hashira versus Akuza, um, where they kind of expanded upon that
Mm.
greatly. It's an action sequence, so of course we want to see it.
Oh,
But
totally.
he unleashes every single technique he can, and still they weren't able to really take him down.
Oh, yeah.
And then when he's fighting headless, and they're like, "What the hell is going on?" You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And something that's cool too is we got a visual representation of, we'll just say Tanjiro reaching Ultra Instinct mode.
Yep. That was
Um,
cool.
we got like in the manga, you read it, but to see it visually in the anime is really what helps set anime apart from manga, right?
Oh, yeah.
I feel like they did a really good job visualizing it, which I loved. And of course, this is one of a trilogy of theatrical releases to finish off the Demon Slayer anime. Um, Overall, what did you think?
I think out of all the content we got out of Demon Slayer from the very first season, the first movie, all the way to this one, I'd rank it probably one of the best, if not second best, out of the entire franchise. It's hard for me right now to kind of put it on the same level or below or above the Mugen Train. But it was just amazing. 2.5 hours of just pure greatness, and you know, definitely one of my favorite things of media in the recent year, which is
Yeah,
amazing.
I liked it. I liked it. I wouldn't. I'm not gonna. I'm gonna reserve my judgment on whether it's like truly great or not until the entire trilogy gets released.
Mhm,
There were some visual upgrades when it came to like Muzan that were tonally different than the rest of the movie. I feel like they
mhm,
really relied on some 3D animation that it looked good, but I felt like it was a little off-putting slightly. You know what I
mm,
mean? I felt like there was just like it almost felt like that animation was done by a different animation studio that kind of specialized more in like 3D type of deal, if that makes any sense. There was just something about the way Muzan was portrayed and the animation that felt different than the entirety of the movie. And for that, I can't necessarily say it was like a perfect outing. You know what I mean?
sure.
But I do think when you take it into the whole of the anime series, it does it justice. And when I look at it in terms of the manga, it does it justice in terms of like the visuals, the storytelling, the beats. I think it would actually be like there is something to be said about watching a any sort of media with a crowd in a movie theater because there were I didn't have a super packed theater, but there were a couple groups, right? There were like maybe 3 or 4 different groups that were seeing the movie, and when you hear the like, when you all kind of like are excited at the same thing, there's no feeling like it, which makes
Mhm.
a theatrical release like different than watching it at home. And like I can watch Spider-Man No Way Home all the time at home and enjoy it, but nothing beats seeing it in a theater where everybody's freaking out about all the story beats and the cameos and stuff like that, right? Same thing with Avengers Endgame.
Oh,
Dude,
yeah.
when like there are certain moments I distinctly remember in the theater, yeah?
Oh,
And
yeah.
they were escalating that in the release on this movie. I feel like if it was bigger and I was like with like a full pack theater, maybe my perception would be a little different. But it feels like this is actually going to be better consumed episodically instead of in one big 2.5 hour, 1.5 hour adventure, right? So that was my
Mhm.
only thing is it felt like it might actually be better watched at home with your friends and family than it was in the theater. But that's just me, you know. Like again, I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I liked it. I thought there was a lot of good story beats within it. I thought the action sequences were amazing. It probably would have been crazier with maybe a full theater of Demon Slayer fans. But the way the storytelling beats were, I feel like it was definitely more meant more for episodic storytelling instead of one um, big story.
Right.
Awesome. Well, that was our review, spoiler filled review of Demon Slayer. What we're jumping into next is Nintendo Direct. Now, Nintendo released a lot of things. We got Metroid Prime
Mhm.
4, Fire Emblem, Donkey Kong Bonanza, the Super Mario Galaxy movie and bundle, Yoshi, the 40th anniversary of Super Mario, a lot of big things. But we're going to focus our discussion today on Pokemon, as Chris and I are big fans. I've been playing Pokemon since like middle school, and you know, I've just kept up with it ever since. And Nintendo Direct announced a lot of really awesome things. I mean, I also love the Fire Emblem series. One of my first RPGs that got me into RPGs is it's actually a Sega Genesis title called Shining Force, and that was kind of similar to Fire Emblem, where you're collecting units and doing kind of turn based, almost chess like combat. So there's a lot of stuff we could talk about with Nintendo Direct, but we're gonna go into our initial thoughts of Pokemon Legends ZA. Chris, what did you think about? We'll start with the just overall reaction of Pokemon Legends ZA. We got to see a little bit more, and see some like different mega evolutions and stuff like that. What do you think about Pokemon Legends ZA?
Well, I will say that after this, Nintendo Direct of Legends ZA, it makes me want to get the game a little bit more, but also doesn't make me want to get the game more, at least as far as the Switch too. And I like the new three new Mega Evolution, which are from the Kalos region, so Greninja, Chespin, Delphox. They definitely expand the lore on their Mega Evolutions, like being magical, being a true ninja or a warrior. I do like that whole new side of Mega Evolutions. Although, a little bit further, I don't like how they, you know, kept not gatekeep, but like you have to earn it by having to battle online with other people, and you don't know how high of a rank you have to get these mega stones because it's also, and if I remember correctly, it's also a time period of when you can get these stones before they disappear and potentially come back again later on. And, for that, you have to have a Nintendo Online membership, which is, to me, just doesn't feel quite right because you have to get that to get these mega evolutions if they're viable for VGC. You have to get that and have to do well to get them. Whereas if you're a casual player like myself who doesn't want to battle people online, it's just like, really? I have to do all that work just to get these extra mega evolutions? They look cool, don't get me wrong, but it's just like, if I'm not that good of a battler of other people online, it just seems like extra work that I may just not want to do, and I may not ever get them. That's kind
Yeah.
of what I feel like.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, so Pokemon Legends ZA, it looks like a really cool game. I loved Pokemon Legends Arceus. I thought that was a pretty cool take on the Pokemon genre. I will say I agree with you in the fact that Mega Evolution shouldn't be locked by a paywall, because that means, to me, if you are into VGC, if you are into competitive Pokemon battling, there is a pay to win element and aspect to it, depending on how strong these mega evolutions are, right?
Hmm.
Whereas if there's some crazy boosts to these mega evolutions and you're unable to get them except through DLC. I mean, it's kind of like in Pokemon Sword and Shield, or not Sword and Shield, uh, in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. If you don't
Mm.
have the DLC, you don't get Ogerpon, and Ogerpon's like pretty powerful, right? I'm
Oh
not a
yeah.
VGC player. I'm not a competitive Pokemon battler. I basically I have a living dex of nearly all the Pokemon, and I just want to kind of keep that up. I think that's a pretty cool. It's kind of like how I collect Magic cards and collect comic books. Like I'm just collecting Pokemon at this point. You know what I mean?
Right. Totally.
And when it comes to like DLC, they released DLC before the game even is out, which is kind of
Ugh,
wild to me. I hate
very.
that, because that
Hmm.
means that this game could have just came out with the full-fledged game and they could have had DLC in the works. And I feel like that's what DLC is supposed to be. It's supposed to be the extra, right? And this
Hmm.
doesn't seem like extra. This seems, I mean, DLC's planned. I'm just not a fan of how they did it. A lot of what Nintendo's doing nowadays, in my adult years, I'm just like not a fan of. I'm not a fan of the company. Like, if I were new to gaming, I probably would stay away from Nintendo. I'm
Hmm.
not interested in getting the Nintendo Switch 2. I'm not interested in really, like, I want to experience a lot of these games purely from nostalgia reasons.
Yep.
And that's not enough for me to like purchase Pokemon Legends ZA. No matter how good it looks, the practices of the company are what's stopping me, right?
Right.
And there's a lot of people who don't care. They'll just like buy it because it's what what they want. But at a certain point, I got to think of like, is Nintendo going to stifle other games because of their greed? You know what I mean? And that's when I
Hmm.
gotta kind of got to draw a line. Um, Now the megas look dope. I
Oh
love the
yeah.
Mega Greninja. I love
Yep.
the Mega Delphox. I love the Mega Chestnut. I love the designs, dude. Like, I mean, I can't knock the employees of the Pokemon Company and their design. Like Game Freak has dope design, but Nintendo itself is so uh greedy that it really subtracts from the excitement.
Oh yeah.
Requiring the Nintendo Online membership, I don't mind, because in order to be able to host the battles, enable to do online trades, like there needs to be servers for that, and that's what a Nintendo Online membership is meant to, you know, pay for. Kind of like Xbox Live, people are like, "What is this? Why do we have to pay for this?" Well, you weren't able to play Halo and have those servers and have a good, solid connection without it. That being said, Nintendo's has kind of always been known for having crap online services, so we'll see how
Hmm.
the Switch 2 has improved that. I know they're one of the cheapest services, which is good. I think they're
Right.
only what, 4.99 a month,
Give or take.
$50 a year, something like that.
Yeah.
Whereas Xbox is just gone up in price in many ways. You have your console Xbox Live and Game Pass, and then you need to pay another tier to get your console or get
Yep.
your PC up to that same level, right? So in terms of the value, Nintendo actually isn't too bad in terms of that. They do paywall your previous, if you want to play OG NES games, SNES games, now Virtual Boy, I guess, you have to kind
Mhm.
of pay an additional add-on to the Nintendo service fee, which sucks, but it's good that they have a very base fee.
Right.
That's give kudos where it's deserved, give criticism where it's deserved. At least that aspect of it is not too bad. Like, what do you think of the designs of the every all the megas that's been out? Like, I like Victory Bell as a Pokemon. Venus Flytrap, I think, is really cool. I was kind of obsessed with them when I was a child, so it like that. And was it Carnivore or the
Arnivine.
Carnivine? Yeah, they
Yeah.
I like those Pokemon, right?
Right.
And I think the Mega Dragonite, I understand what they're trying to do with it. I'm not the biggest fan of its design. Um, the Malamar, I think, is the latest one that was kind of
Yes.
released too. I think that one looks really cool. I think the designs of a
Mhm.
lot of them are interesting and cool. I
Yeah.
understand where they were going with some of them, especially with like the Raichus. Like, people love Pikachu, so let's make the Raichus more like Pikachu, I feel like.
Yep.
What do you think of the new designs?
Well, let's go start off with, as you said, Mega Dragonite. I'm indifferent to Mega Dragonite. I don't hate it, but I'm not I don't love it like my favorite Mega. But I thought overall it was pretty good. They could have made it a lot worse. But, if you read its deck entry, it tries to go in and, end the fight very fast and very quickly with as much power as it can. So that way it doesn't feel as bad to hurt you as if the battle prolongs. And I feel like that design really matches that whole description very well. And the wings on its head are a little bit too big. I will say that, but overall the design is not terrible. I think they could have made it way worse. And when it comes to our second Mega Evolution that I really liked was Mega Halucha. Man, that Mexican lucha libre just amplified with that one, black and gold, and just overall freaking amazing looking. um, and that's probably my favorite Mega Evolution that's been released right now.
For
And
sure.
then, then we got our Mega Victory Bell. I do like it, I do like the whole like, hey, it has so much power. The acid is just so much that it has to close off its own mouth. And, seeing how its acid is so powerful it corrodes, steel. I want to know if it'll be viable in VGC of getting rid of steel types, because that's probably the best defensive type in the entire game, or even just like a normal playthrough, right? Steel types can be a pain in the butt if you do a Nuzlocke. So having that be a lifesaver is really cool. I liked Mega Malamar, kind of gave me Jimmy Neutron vibes of like a brain blast looking thing and able to control people in Pokemon. That was really cool. And then, the Kalos starters, like I think Greninja's my favorite out of all of them, and same as the Mega Evolution. But I will have to say the other two were never really my favorite out of the starters. But their Mega Evolutions definitely made me rethink, like, oh, this is cool. I love how Delphox is on a broom with flying sticks around it, and then just being like a king or a knightly looking king with Chespin's Mega Evolution, which was really cool. And then like Mega Raichu X and Y, I forget which one is which, but one of them looks like a evolution of Raichu back in the prototype of Red and Blue called Garuchu. And it looked like they just took that, made an Mega Evolution, and that was really cool. I'm like, cool. Way to bring back old designs into the new era of Pokemon and mix and match very well. Be like, oh, I know this is from you know, data leaks or minds of old games, and you know, I do like majority of those new Mega Pokemon.
Yeah, yeah. something I feel like was a misstep in the design is they have a primary typing and secondary typing. They should
Hmm.
have done something with the super effectiveness, not effectiveness with like secondary typings, to be quite honest.
Oh,
Um, you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
just when it comes to typing and having like super effective moves, I think that in the new mobile, like when they're trying to bring VGC and separate the competitive Pokemon aspect of it from the mainline series,
Oh,
it
yeah.
could have had for some interesting dynamics in that. But that would be if I was like designing my own ground up summoning game, which I would
Hmm.
probably get sued for by Nintendo if I created a game about summoning monsters. But
Oh, yeah.
we'll talk about that in just a moment. Um, yeah, man, the mega designs are cool. I like the idea of like kind of mega evolutions. I hate the fact that they're just one-time battle evolutions. Like I'd like a Mega Charizard to always be Mega Charizard, you know what I mean?
Totally.
Uh, and I hate it. I hope that maybe we'll have more XY type of mega evolutions. Like I think it's
Hmm.
kind of cool where you can have one Pokemon have multiple mega evolutions. If we're gonna
Yeah.
have it be battle centric, like why just Raichu? Why just Charizard? Why can't we have all the starters have like a mega evolution of some sort and stuff like that?
Right. Yeah, I was gonna say, overall the mega evolutions are cool, but the only thing that also is a downside is like with that DLC you mentioned earlier, it's kind of like a tease to more mega evolutions. Maybe there might be more branched mega evolutions that are already existing or, might exist. And the fact that they just tease it just makes it all more harder to resist and all harder to, you know, accept.
Yeah. Now, what do you think about uh staying on topic of Pokemon, but also like announced is Pokopia, the creepy Ditto human version, has decided to use its friends to farm. Farming sim Pokemon. What do you think of Animal Crossing, Pokemon Crossing hybrid here?
I like the idea, of Pokemon farm simulator and using the different Pokemon to help you raise that farm. But the fact that it's a Ditto with long purplish arms to do those things is really off-putting to me. Why couldn't it have been a random trainer or, something like all the Pokemon get together and be like, "Oh, we need to survive on this, island that's cut off from the rest of, the continent or something," right?
True.
It's a little off-putting, at least with that Ditto. The Ditto face and the Ditto arms is just a little too weird for me?
Yeah. I mean, it's a concept that I know a lot of people are gonna enjoy. I think it's hilarious that Pal World is
Oh,
basically
yeah.
Pokemon meets, uh, resource gathering builder simulator, and in this instance, Pokemon's ripping from Pal World, which I thought was kind of hilarious, where they're taking an aspect of Pal World and making it their own. I think Pal World should probably sue them or something. I don't know. But to kind
I
of
mean,
veer off on our final topic, we're going to talk a little bit about Nintendo, Pal World, lawsuits, and farming sims, right?
right.
So I know you're not as into Pal World as I am. I love Pal World. Uh, I have a friend who's I think is gonna hop on it soon, and I'm like, yo, let me know. I'll play. I'll get back on it. But for those who might not know, Nintendo being super litigious. In fact, they sue their own
Mhm.
fans for doing Super Smash Brother content,
Yep.
and creating tournaments and stuff like that. Which, yeah, let's sue the people who play your games. Um,
Mhm.
they have retroactively filed patents for certain game mechanics because they're trying to patent game mechanics so that way they can get super litigious on their competition, about summoning Pokemon or animals, creatures to fight or be used as mounts, and the ability to fly and then dismount upon landing. Not dismount, but turn into a running mount, which has
Mhm.
been done by World of Warcraft already before Pokemon ever thought of it.
Right.
And they're trying to retroactively file these patents to further their lawsuit because, from what I hear, they're losing.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
so, what do you think about this Pokemon lawsuit? Because it really makes me not want to be a fan of Pokemon anymore.
Yeah, yeah, it kind of just off puts me. Like, I like Pokemon. It's been a childhood thing of mine for the longest of time. It's got good memories, and the fact that they're trying to do this just makes it like really scummy. Like, don't get me wrong, like, I think having competition is great because it makes you do better, it makes prices better, and it makes you overall a better company, right? For example, you have Apple and then you have Samsung, right? If Apple was the dominant one or if Samsung was the dominant one, everyone would just have to be sucker up and deal with whatever they released, right? With them having strong competition, you get better phones, better cameras. And, the fact that Pokemon's just being so selfish and so greedy and not willing to change their ways is just very off putting to me. And I just am not a big fan because if Power World can definitely make Pokemon scared, it can make it do better, meaning you get better graphics, you get better games, you get better prices, and you don't get and you feel like you're paying if it's expensive, you're like, okay, it makes sense why I'm paying $100 for this because it's really good and it's really worth that money. And just the
It's
fact
not
that
a
they're
game
just
should
like,
be
no,
$60.
you know, at this point, it wouldn't surprise me if they did $100.
Well,
But
that's Nintendo's dynamic pricing is what they're trying to do. You know what I mean? They're trying to. I mean, here's the thing. I think games should release at a base price, and honestly, it should be kind of like a humble bundle or like a fanatical type site or GOG. You should be able to have a base price and then maybe give more if you're like, well, honestly, I think this game's worth $40 more than the $60 price point that they set. Um, maybe it's because I'm American and I'm used to tipping culture, but like, let's give these developers the ability to not to charge more, but to earn more money based off of the consumer's intent and what they feel like a game's worth. I will say, uh, Nintendo isn't the first company to patent a game mechanic because one of my favorite game mechanics is the Nemesis system from Shadows of Mordor and Shadows of War. And I don't know if you know about this system, Chris, but when you are in the overworld and you get killed by a random scrub, in this game, you're like immortal. That random scrub then gets a name and it gets power ups, sometimes based off of the battle that you had with it, and then becomes your nemesis. It becomes your bad guy.
oh, yeah,
Yeah.
I
And
remember you telling me about that. That's sick.
now other games can't use that because they've patented it. And they were going to release a game, a Wonder Woman game that used that mechanic, and then they scrapped it. So it's like, yo, if you're not going to use the mechanic, let other people use it for God's sakes, you know?
Oh yeah.
And oh man, I have a big problem because imagine Bicycle, the card maker, patenting poker. It's like, oh, if you draw a card, that's our game mechanic. You can't do that in any other game. It's kind of BS, to be quite honest. I
Oh
hate
yeah.
that. And that's essentially what Nintendo's doing. They're trying to kind of like bully the smaller developers through their $1 billion legal team. Not saying they have a $1 billion legal team, but they're a $1 billion company with a
Oh
crazy
yeah.
legal team. But here's the thing,
Mhm.
they're trying to patent these things. Guess what? It's already been done. Digimon did it first.
Oh yeah.
Summoning creatures, evolving creatures, de-evolving creatures.
Yep.
Final Fantasy has
Mhm.
summons as well with Ifrit. And I mean, in Final Fantasy 9, Yuna's whole class was a summoner. And that's the ninth iteration. They've had the summoning class forever. I think since was it I think the first Final
Early.
Fantasy or maybe Final Fantasy 3, something like that. Either way, they're trying to take claim to an innovation they didn't innovate,
Oh yeah.
which is what it is. And they are suing Pal World, and they've changed the Pal World game greatly. They don't have the ability to ride your pals. They changed it, and you have a glider, and depending on the pal you have, you can upgrade the glider. But they were all based off of being able to fly your pal around. You were able to fly your pal around and like shoot fire and missiles and stuff like that, things you can't do in Pokemon, but they're trying to take that away from you. Like, it would be dope if I could fly Charizard around and do a flamethrower in the overworld, but guess what? They didn't
You
do it.
can.
And they can do it. They probably are thinking of doing it because of Power World. And it's like you said, Power World's kind of giving them the competition. And instead of trying to innovate their games, they're trying to take away innovation from other games. And I think that is the worst, most nefarious, terrible thing you can do for the market. And it's kind of like what I hate about the Pokemon company and Nintendo. And what
Mhm.
makes me just like not want to support Nintendo anymore. Now, what's funny is that the company itself, making Pal World, announced after Pocopia that they're going to have their own Pal World farming sim. And what are they gonna do? Sue Animal Crossing? Like what's Pokemon gonna do? Try and stop Power World from doing now? You know what I mean? Like, and that's the thing, dude. There's been plenty of farming sims. If anything, maybe like Minecraft or whoever did it first should sue Nintendo and give them a taste of their own
Mhm.
medicine.
Tell me
Um,
about it.
but yeah, man, like, what do you think about how like how Nintendo has Power World has had to take time away from development and devote money and resources away from developing their game to fight Nintendo legally, and then they're kind of sticking it to them with the farming sim. What do you think about that whole situation?
I think they should keep doing it, right? Stick it to Nintendo to force them to be better, but also it kind of sucks for them to take away that time and money to develop the game, right? They can make new mechanics, that already exist, but change them enough to where it's their own and, do what they want with it. Like the Nemesis one you mentioned, instead of, the become your arch nemesis, it takes that Pokemon or pal comes back with a whole army of powerful Pokemon or powerful pals, I should say, and just change it up to be where it's different, but also gives you that familiarity and just the whole fact that they're just trying to run Palworld to the ground with these stupid lawsuits is really annoying and not cool. And I just feel like they're losing a lot of their older audiences to them because now they're old enough to be like, "Oh, yeah, I don't wanna support this." And even with the younger generation like Gen Z, they're all different from all the previous generations, and them seeing this, they probably don't wanna support it, right? They're all about equality and about being treated with respect, and, seeing this, I don't think they would wanna support Nintendo or do anything Pokemon when it comes to that. And, I just feel like that's sad because Pokemon could be one of the best franchises in the entire planet, but with them acting this way and going about some shady practices like that just makes it not worth supporting them.
Yeah, man, it's tough because I have young nieces and nephews, and I would love to share my love with Pokemon with them, but it's kind of out of control. Even with the cards, like the cards, there are scalpers who tore up Japanese McDonald's just to get the
Oh
special
yeah.
collab cards. And I mean, that's not necessarily Nintendo's fault, or the Pokemon company's fault. But at the same time, like, I want to share these loves, that I've had since I was a kid with like the next generation of my family, and it makes it difficult too. Like, I want to get into gaming, but and Nintendo makes amazing kids games, but
Mhm.
I don't want to
Mhm.
support Nintendo. It doesn't matter how amazing their kids games are. They themselves are not really friendly. You know what I mean? And it makes
Yeah,
me not want to support it.
totally.
Well, that's it for today's episode, folks. So we talk shit on Nintendo and we discussed Demon Slayer. I mean, hey, man, if these companies weren't doing uh, bad shit, we wouldn't be talking that this way about them. You know what I mean? But we
Exactly.
appreciate anybody who's came to listen. Hopefully, we're going to start being on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and stuff like that soon in the future. And then next week is our manga and comic review episode. So if you want to keep up with the latest in comic books and the written word, tune in next week. We are also going to talk about the new Marvel animated What If series with Marvel Zombies. So yeah, hopefully if you're interested in line with ours, man, come check us out, listen in, join the chat, and like, comment, and subscribe. And we will see you next week. Peace.
See you later, everybody. Peace.